In this video, I'm going to explain the key differences between the Oral-B Genius X 20,000 and the Oral-B Genius 9000. Right, jumping straight in then, let's get to a verdict. Now, for what it's worth, my opinion is that generally speaking, you'll probably want to go for the Oral-B Genius X. It's essentially a slight upgrade on the Oral-B Genius 9000 with a few small tweaks, and I say small tweaks, so if you already own the Genius 9000, it's not worth upgrading. However, if the price differential between the Genius X and the Genius 9000 is more than about £20 to £30, then you're probably going to want to pay serious consideration to the Genius 9000, as it probably offers you then better value for money. But overall, I'm going to bring it to the Genius X. So let's dig down into the key differences between these two models then. Now, a lot of these differences are very minor, and I'm basing this on the UK specification models at the time of recording. So everything is slightly subject to change, but hopefully this is accurate as it can be. So probably the main and major difference between these two models, and the reason that the newer Genius X exists, is to do with artificial intelligence. Now, the Oral-B Genius 9000 launched in 2016, and at the time it was able to track the position of the toothbrush in your mouth. Now, it did that by using the front-facing camera on your smartphone. You needed to download an app for Android and iOS, and the camera would track the position and relay that in the application for you. Now, as a result, the brush came supplied with a smartphone stand that would attach to a mirror or a tiled surface in your bathroom using a suction cup, much like the sort of smartphone holder you might get for a windscreen in your vehicle. Now, that was all well and good, but it was a little bit of a clunky setup. It meant it took a few seconds extra to get set up each time you wanted to use it. And the Genius X essentially does away with the need for the front-facing camera on the smartphone application. Instead, sensors built into the brush handle of the Genius X relay the position of the toothbrush to the smartphone app instead. So those sensors relay that information, the app interprets that and tracks your cleaning performance. And Oral-B call this artificial intelligence, or AI, and that's the main difference between the Genius X and the Genius 9000. They essentially do the same things, but do it in slightly different ways, and the Genius X is a slightly more practical way of doing this because you don't need to use the front-facing camera on your smartphone, and you don't need to put the smartphone into a smartphone holder to be able to track that position. Now, in terms of box contents, this is where the Genius 9000 and the Genius X do differ. The Genius 9000 always comes supplied with 4 brush heads. The actual brush head supply does depend on the variant of the 9000 you select. With the Genius X, at the time of recording, there are 2 main variants. You have a standard model and a luxe model. They come in a couple of different colours, but on the standard model, you just get 1 brush head. With the luxe model, you get 4 brush heads. So the luxe Genius X is more comparable to the Genius 9000 than the standard Genius X. So there's also some differences in the colours of the brush handles that the Genius X comes supplied in comparison to the Genius 9000. So the Genius X that you see here comes in black, anthracite grey, which is this model, and rose gold. Now, the Genius 9000, on the other hand, comes in 6 different colour options. As you can see here, I'm holding up the rose gold colour option, which has a rose gold coloured panel. The rest of the handle is white. Now, the other colour options available for the Genius 9000 are white, silver, black, midnight black, orchid purple, and this rose gold. Now, an additional accessory that came in the box with the Genius 9000 that doesn't come supplied with the Genius X is a brush head storage compartment. This little plastic container clips around the charging stand that comes provided and offered a home for up to 4 brush heads. They lay flat within the storage compartment, and there's a lid that closes over to protect the brush heads when they're not in use. So it's a useful accessory for storing spares, additional replacement brush heads, but you don't get that with the Genius X. As I previously mentioned, the Genius 9000 came with a suction cup smartphone holder. That does no longer come supplied with the Genius X because you don't need it. That said, the Genius X still relies on use of a smartphone application, and you get no mechanism for holding your smartphone in the bathroom when you're actually using it. It would be nice to see a smartphone stand in the box, but alas, you don't get this. I should also mention that although both the Genius 9000 and Genius X are Bluetooth enabled and use the same smartphone app, the app configures itself slightly differently depending on which toothbrush handle you've got connected. They're relatively minor differences, but the Genius X variant of the app, if you like, doesn't use the position technology with the front-facing camera like the 9000 version does. So the app will automatically set itself based on the brush that you're connecting. Whilst the Genius 9000 never came supplied with this accessory is one that proved quite popular. It's called the Oral-B Wireless Smart Guide, and essentially it does a little bit like the app does without the need to use the app, and it sits on your bathroom countertop or something like that. Now, this communicated with the toothbrush via Bluetooth, and the Genius 9000 worked with it, albeit this did not come supplied in the box. You'd have to purchase this as a separate accessory. With the Genius X, the Smart Guide does not work, so you can't use this with the Genius X toothbrush. So it's just a little thing to note: if you have previously used this or like this accessory, you can't use it with the Genius X. The last thing to note is that the price of the Genius X is generally more expensive than the Genius 9000. Now, prices are always subject to change, of course, and it depends from one retailer to another. But as a general rule, you're going to be looking at about £20 to £30 difference between the Genius X and the 9000, the Genius X being the more expensive. Now, for about £20 difference, I do think the Genius X is still the better brush because you haven't got the hassle with using the smartphone holder and what have you, and the front-facing camera that you need on the Genius 9000. That said, with the Genius X, you're paying more, but you're actually getting less in the box. You're not getting the smartphone holder, you're not getting the brush head storage compartment. So is that inflation? Is that Oral-B profiteering? I don't know. That's just my sort of take on it, that the Genius X perhaps is commanding more of a premium than it possibly should. But it's still probably the better one to buy. Now, the Genius 9000 at times has been offered on super special pricing, sometimes as low as £99. Now, obviously, if it's that low, the price difference, generally speaking, between the Genius X and the 9000 is then going to be much greater, around about £50 or £60, because the Genius X price has settled at approximately £165 to £169, depending on which model, the standard or the luxe. So if the Genius 9000 is down at £99, that's quite a big saving of around about £60 odd, and I would say then that the Genius 9000 is a better buy. But hopefully this video has presented you with some of the key differences. You can learn and understand more by checking out the full detailed written comparison that accompanies this video, link in the description below. If you found this video useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up. But until next time, thanks for watching.